The front door clicked shut at 11:47 p.m. I know because I'd been watching the clock since 9:30, when Claire's quick dinner should have ended. I was sitting in the dark living room pretending to watch TV, but really just waiting. "Hey, babe. Sorry I'm so late," Claire called out, her voice bright and casual as she kicked off her heels in the entryway. You would not believe how much Sarah and I had to catch up on. We completely lost track of time. I stood up, forcing a smile. "Sarah from your old job." "Yeah, remember? I told you she texted me last week." Claire walked over and kissed my cheek. Her perfume smelled different, stronger, like she'd reapplied it recently. "We went to that new Italian place downtown, the one with the impossible reservation list. Turns out Sarah knows the owner." "That's nice," I said, studying her face. She looked normal, tired maybe, but normal. I was starting to worry. "Oh, Adam, I'm sorry. I should have called." She squeezed my hand. "I'm exhausted, though. I'm going straight to bed." I watched her climb the stairs, her designer bag slung over her shoulder, the cream-colored Prada I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes, or maybe I was just being paranoid. The next morning I woke up to find Claire already in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a calendar reminder about a client meeting. Nothing unusual. I headed downstairs to make coffee, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling from the night before. That's when I realized I couldn't find my car keys. I'd had them yesterday, but now they were nowhere. Claire and I had a bad habit of accidentally taking each other's keys since our key fobs looked identical. Her purse was sitting on the kitchen counter, right where she'd left it. I unzipped it, intending to just grab my keys and be done with it. Instead, my hand brushed against something papery, folded and stuffed into the side pocket. I pulled it out. It was a receipt printed on thick hotel cardstock. The Riverside Grand Hotel Suite, 1407 check-in, Friday, 8:45 p.m. checkout. Saturday, 12:00 p.m. total, $487 Friday. Last night, the night she was supposedly having dinner with Sarah. My hands started shaking. I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But there it was, clear as day. A hotel suite booked for the entire night just 30 minutes outside our town. The timestamp showed she'd checked in at 8:45 p.m., which would have been right around when she'd texted me saying she was just sitting down for dinner. I heard the shower shut off upstairs. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to storm up there right now, throw the receipt in her face, and demand an explanation. But something stopped me. If I confronted her now, she'd have an excuse ready. She was always good with words. It's what made her such a successful marketing director. She'd spin it somehow, make it sound innocent. And I'd be left wondering if I was the crazy one. No, I needed more information first. I took a photo of the receipt with my phone, then carefully folded it back exactly how I'd found it, and returned it to the side pocket of her purse. My keys were there too, just like I'd suspected. I grabbed them and went back to making coffee, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Coffee smells amazing," Claire said cheerfully as she came into the kitchen 10 minutes later, her hair still damp. She was wearing her weekend clothes, yoga pants and one of my old college sweatshirts. She looked so normal, so much like the woman I'd married 7 years ago. "Found my keys in your purse," I said, keeping my voice light. "Oh, good. I thought maybe I'd grabbed them by accident." She poured herself a cup of coffee and smiled at me over the rim. "What should we do today? Maybe we could go to the farmer's market." I looked at my wife, at her familiar face and her easy smile, and realized I had no idea who she really was anymore. "Sure," I said. "That sounds perfect. I couldn't eat breakfast." Claire chatted about nothing. The weather, her sister's new puppy, whether we should finally replace the living room curtains, while I pushed scrambled eggs around my plate. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was that hotel receipt. Suite 1407, $487. At the farmer's market, I went through the motions. We bought fresh tomatoes, artisan bread, local honey. Claire linked her arm through mine as we walked, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. She bought lavender from a vendor, holding it up to my nose. "Doesn't this smell amazing?" she asked, her eyes bright. "Yeah," I said. "Amazing." That night, after Claire fell asleep, I carefully slid her phone off the nightstand. I knew her passcode. It was our wedding anniversary, 0617. But when I tried it, the phone buzzed angrily. Wrong password. I tried her birthday. Wrong again. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. She'd changed it. I put the phone back and lay in the dark, listening to her breathe. When had she changed her passcode, and why? Sunday morning, Claire announced she needed to run to the office. I know it's the weekend, she said apologetically. But I have that big presentation on Monday and I really need to finalize a few things. I'll be back by lunch. No problem, I said. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I was moving. I went straight to her home office, a converted spare bedroom where she sometimes worked on weekends. Her laptop was password protected too, but she kept a lot of physical files in the desk drawer. I found client folders, expense reports, meeting notes, all normal work stuff. Then in the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old magazines, I found something interesting. A burner phone. It was a cheap flip phone, the kind you buy at convenience stores with prepaid minutes. My hands were shaking as I opened it. There were no saved contacts, but the call history showed dozens of calls to and from the same number over the past 3 months. The most recent call was Friday afternoon, just hours before she'd gone to that hotel. I wrote down the number, then photographed every call log entry. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and got out of there. That's when I made a decision. I needed professional help. On Monday morning, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. Instead, I drove to a small office in a strip mall across town. The sign on the door read, Davidson Investigations. Discreet, professional, confidential. Jerry Davidson was a former police detective who'd gone private 5 years ago. He was in his late 50s with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. I told him everything. The late night, the hotel receipt, the second phone, the changed passcode. How long have you been married? He asked, taking notes. 7 years. Kids? No, we talked about it, but Claire wanted to focus on her career. He nodded slowly. And you're sure you want to do this? Because once you know, you can't unknow it. I'm sure. Okay, I'll need a photo of your wife, her full name, her workplace, and any other details you can give me. I'll also need that phone number from the burner. I gave him everything. He quoted me a rate that made me wince, but I didn't care. I needed answers. One more thing, he said as I was leaving. Don't change your behavior around her. Act completely normal. If she suspects you're onto her, she'll just get better at hiding things. That week was torture. I went to work, came home, had dinner with Claire, watched TV beside her, made love to her, all while feeling like I was living with a stranger. She seemed completely normal, even affectionate. Wednesday night, she made my favorite meal, pot roast with all the trimmings, and we ate by candlelight. I feel like we haven't really connected lately, she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. I love you, Adam, you know that, right? I love you too, I said automatically. Thursday afternoon, Jerry called. I've got something. Can you come by the office? I told Claire I was meeting an old college friend for drinks and drove straight there. Jerry had a manila folder waiting for me on his desk and his expression was grim. Your wife's been having regular meetings with a man named Richard Thornton. He's her boss, I finished, feeling sick. The VP of marketing. Right. They've been meeting at the Riverside Grand Hotel every Friday night for the past 6 weeks. Always the same room, Suite 1407. It's actually booked under his corporate card on a standing reservation. He slid several photographs across the desk. Claire and Richard entering the hotel together. Claire and Richard in the hotel bar sitting close, his hand on her knee. Claire and Richard kissing in the parking garage. I couldn't breathe. There's more, Jerry said quietly. I tracked that phone number from the burner. It's Richard Thornton's personal cell. They talk or text almost every day. I stared at the photos, my vision blurring. The woman in these pictures looked like Claire. Same hair, same smile. But she was touching another man with an intimacy that belonged to me. I'm sorry, Jerry said. I drove home in a fog. Claire was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, humming along to music. She turned when she heard me, her face lighting up. Hey, you're home early. How was drinks with Kevin? And that's when I decided I wasn't going to confront her yet. I was going to watch and wait and figure out exactly what was going on before I played my hand. It was fine, I said. What's for dinner? Friday came again. I knew the pattern now. Every Friday night for 6 weeks, Claire had gone to that hotel with Richard Thornton. This time, she told me she had a team dinner that might run late. Some of us are going out for drinks after, she said, adjusting her earrings in the hallway mirror. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. her makeup more carefully done than usual. "Don't wait up. Have fun," I said, my voice hollow. But this time I followed her. Jerry had given me a GPS tracker, the kind that magnetically attaches to a car's undercarriage. I'd planted it on Claire's Mercedes 2 days ago. Now I watched the glowing dot on my phone screen as she drove, not to any restaurant, but straight to the Riverside Grand Hotel. I gave her 20 minutes, then I drove there myself. The hotel was one of those upscale places with a marble lobby and a pianist playing soft jazz in the corner. I parked and sat in my car staring at the illuminated windows above, trying to figure out which one was Suite 1407. I couldn't do this. I couldn't just sit here while my wife was upstairs with another man. I was about to drive home when my phone rang. It was Jerry. "Adam, I found something else. Something you need to know before you do anything." "What?" "I've been digging deeper into Richard Thornton. He's got a history. Complaints from 2 former female employees at his last company. Both were settled quietly out of court. I also managed to get access to some of the text messages from that burner phone." He paused. "Adam, I don't think this is a typical affair." "What do you mean?" "Some of the messages from Thornton to your wife. They're coercive, threatening even. I'm sending you screenshots now." My phone buzzed with incoming images. I scrolled through them, my blood running cold. From Richard. "Same time Friday. Don't even think about saying no." From Richard. "You looked beautiful today. I've been thinking about those photos all afternoon." From Richard. "I'd hate for Adam to accidentally see what I have. Or HR for that matter." From Claire. "Please, Richard. This has to stop." From Richard. "It stops when I say it stops. Suite 1407, 8 p.m. I couldn't breathe." Photos. He had photos of her, and he was using them to... "This isn't an affair," Jerry said quietly. "This is blackmail. Sexual coercion. Your wife is a victim here, Adam." I sat in that parking lot for another hour, watching people come and go from the hotel, trying to process what I'd learned. Part of me wanted to storm up there and drag Claire out. Another part wanted to find Richard Thornton and beat him senseless, but instead I drove home and waited. Claire came back at midnight, just like all the other Fridays. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red like she'd been crying, though she tried to hide it. She went straight to the bedroom without really looking at me. I gave her 10 minutes, then I followed her upstairs. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in that black dress, staring at nothing. "Claire," I said quietly. She looked up, startled. "I thought you were asleep." I sat down beside her and carefully pulled the hotel receipt from my pocket, the original one I'd found 2 weeks ago. I placed it on the bed between us. She went completely white. "Adam, I know about Richard," I said. "I know about the hotel. I know about every Friday night for the past 6 weeks." Tears started streaming down her face immediately. Oh God, Adam, please, and I also know about the burner phone. And the text messages, and the photos he has of you." She looked at me with absolute shock. How do you... "It doesn't matter how I know." I took her hand. It was trembling. "What matters is that you tell me everything. Right now. The truth." And finally, after weeks of lies, Claire broke down completely. "It started 4 months ago," she sobbed. "We were at a company retreat. There was a party on the last night, and I drank too much. Richard offered to walk me back to my room, and I thought he was just being nice. But when we got there, he kissed me, and I was so drunk. And everything happened so fast." My jaw clenched, but I forced myself to stay quiet and let her continue. "The next morning I woke up and he was taking pictures of me without my clothes. I freaked out and demanded he delete them, but he just laughed. He said they were insurance. I thought he was joking, but then 2 weeks later he called me into his office and showed them to me on his computer. He said if I wanted them to stay private, I needed to be cooperative." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Because I was so ashamed," she cried. "I let myself get that drunk. I let him into my room. It was my fault, and I thought I could handle it. I thought if I just went along with it for a little while, he'd get bored and leave me alone. But he didn't. He kept demanding more, every Friday. And if I said no, he'd send me one of the photos as a reminder of what he could do." She buried her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry, Adam. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was terrified. Terrified of losing you, losing my job, losing everything. He said if I told anyone, he'd send the photos to you, to HR, to everyone we know. He said he'd ruin both our lives." I pulled her into my arms and held her while she shook with sobs. My mind was racing with rage, but I forced myself to stay calm. Does anyone else know? She shook her head against my chest. No one. I've been handling this alone for months. I feel so dirty, Adam, so used. I hate myself. This isn't your fault, I said firmly. Do you understand me? This is not your fault. He's a predator and he manipulated you. But what do we do now? She whispered. If we report him, he'll release those photos. My career will be over. Everyone will see me as... I don't know yet, I admitted. But we're going to figure this out together. No more secrets. No more lies. From this moment on, we deal with this as a team. She nodded against my chest. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had my wife back. But now I had a much bigger problem. How to destroy Richard Thornton without destroying Claire in the process. Neither of us slept that night. We stayed up until dawn. Claire telling me everything in painful detail while I held her hand and tried to control the rage building inside me. She showed me the burner phone, scrolling through months of increasingly threatening messages from Richard. She told me about the times he'd cornered her at work, the way he'd brush against her in the elevator, the casual touches that made her skin crawl. He's careful, she said, her voice hoarse from crying. He never leaves a real trail. All the hotel reservations are under his corporate card, marked as client entertainment. The photos are on a cloud account I don't have access to. The burner phone was his idea. He bought 2 of them with cash and gave me one. If anyone ever found out, he'd just say I was a willing participant, that I was having an affair and trying to extort him. How many photos are there? I asked. She flinched. I don't know. At least 20. Maybe more. He takes new ones every time. I felt sick. And you're certain he hasn't shared them with anyone? He says he hasn't, but I have no way to know for sure. She looked at me with hollow eyes. Adam, I've thought about going to the police so many times. But what proof do I have? The text messages just look like we're having an affair. The photos prove nothing except that She couldn't finish the sentence. It's coercion, I said firmly. It's sexual assault. But how do we prove that? It's my word against his, and he's a VP. I'm just a director. He has power, connections, expensive lawyers, and if we try and fail, he'll destroy me. He's told me exactly how he'd do it. Send the photos to everyone I know. Tell HR I've been stealing clients. Ruin my professional reputation so thoroughly that I'd never work in marketing again. I stood up and started pacing. There has to be a way. We need evidence. Something that proves he's been coercing you. The text messages aren't enough. A good lawyer would spin them. We need something undeniable. That's when an idea started forming. I grabbed my phone and called Jerry Davidson. It's 6 a.m., he answered groggily. I need your help, I said. Can you get your hands on surveillance equipment? The hidden kind. Cameras, audio recorders, that sort of thing. I heard rustling as he sat up. Depends on what you're planning. I'm planning to catch a predator. Over the next few days, Jerry and I developed a plan. It was risky. If it went wrong, both Claire and I could face legal consequences. But we were out of options. And the thought of Richard Thornton continuing to hurt my wife made me willing to take that risk. The key was to get Richard to confess on tape, to say something explicit enough that it couldn't be denied or explained away. But Claire couldn't be the one wearing the wire. If Richard found it, he'd know immediately that she'd told someone and he'd release the photos. No, it had to be me. This is insane, Claire said when I explained the plan. If he realizes what you're doing, he won't. Trust me. But how will you even get near him? He doesn't know you. He's about to. The next Monday, I took a personal day from work. I put on my best suit, printed up fake business cards identifying myself as a consultant from a marketing analytics firm, and walked straight into Richard Thornton's office building. Getting past the front desk was easier than I expected. I told the receptionist I had an appointment with Mr. Thornton to discuss a potential contract. She called up to confirm, and I heard her tell someone, "A Mr. Adam Parker from Core Metric Solutions is here to see Mr. Thornton." There was a pause. Then she hung up. Mr. Thornton says he doesn't have any appointments this morning. Oh, that's odd, I said, pulling out my phone and pretending to check my calendar. His assistant scheduled this 2 weeks ago. We're supposed to discuss the new analytics package. He'd requested a demo. I lowered my voice conspiratorially. To be honest, it's a pretty significant contract. 6 figures. I'd hate to have to tell my boss that I came all this way and couldn't even get a meeting. The receptionist's expression changed. 6-figure contracts meant commissions, bonuses, happy executives. Let me call up again. This time, someone agreed to see me, though it wasn't Richard himself, but his assistant, a nervous-looking woman in her late 20s named Beth. "I'm so sorry for the confusion," Beth said, meeting me in the lobby. "Mr. Thornton doesn't have any record of this appointment, and his calendar is completely booked today. But if you'd like to leave some materials, I'd be happy to pass them along." "Of course," I said smoothly, though I was hoping to at least introduce myself since I'm here. "Maybe just 5 minutes? I promise I won't take up much of his time." Beth hesitated. I could see her weighing her options, turn away a potential big client or interrupt her demanding boss. "Wait here," she finally said. She disappeared down a hallway. I used the time to survey the office, noting the layout, the security cameras, the glass-walled conference rooms. This was Claire's workplace. Every day she came here knowing Richard was somewhere in this building, holding those photos over her head like a sword. Beth returned with a tight smile. "Mr. Thornton can give you 5 minutes." She led me to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Richard Thornton stood as I entered, a tall man in his late 40s, handsome in a polished way, with silver-touched hair and an expensive watch. He extended his hand with a practiced smile. "Adam Parker," I said, shaking his hand firmly. Hidden in my suit jacket pocket, the voice recorder Jerry had given me was already running. "Richard Thornton, please sit. Now I'm afraid there's been some confusion about this meeting. I know, and I apologize for the mix-up. But since I'm here, I'd love to just briefly introduce what Core Metric can offer." I launched into a memorized pitch about data analytics, watching Richard's face. He was already losing interest, checking his phone. "It sounds interesting," he said, clearly preparing to end the meeting. "Why don't you send some materials to Beth and we'll review them?" "Actually," I said, my tone changing, "I'm not here about analytics." His eyes sharpened. "Excuse me? I'm here about Claire." "My wife." The color drained from his face. For just a moment his polished mask slipped and I saw genuine fear. Then he recovered, his expression hardening. "I think you should leave. I think you should listen." I leaned forward. "I know everything, Richard. The hotel. The photos. The threats. All of it. I have no idea what you're— Suite 1407 at the Riverside Grand every Friday night. You've been sexually coercing my wife for 4 months. He stood abruptly. "Get out of my office before I call security." "Go ahead." "I'd love to explain to security and the police why you have explicit photos of my wife on your computer." He froze. We stared at each other across his desk and I could see him calculating his options. "You can't prove anything," he finally said. "Can't I?" Richard Thornton sat back down slowly, his composed executive demeanor cracking at the edges. He steepled his fingers together and studied me with cold eyes. "Let's say, hypothetically, that I knew what you were talking about," he said carefully. "What exactly do you want?" "I want you to leave my wife alone," I said. "Delete every photo. Stop contacting her. And resign from this company." He laughed, actually laughed. "You think you can walk in here and make demands? You have no leverage. Even if what you're suggesting were true, you have no proof. It would be my word against your wife's, and I think we both know who people would believe." "You're right," I said. "Your word against hers wouldn't be enough. That's why I've spent the past 2 weeks gathering evidence." His smile faltered slightly. "I have phone records showing hundreds of calls between you and my wife's burner phone, the one you bought her. I have text messages. I have hotel receipts all charged to your corporate card. I have photographs of you and Claire entering that hotel together, 6 Fridays in a row." I pulled out my phone and showed him several of Jerry's surveillance photos. "And I have testimony from 2 women at your previous company who filed complaints against you for sexual harassment. Complaints that were mysteriously settled and sealed." Richard's face had gone pale. "Those records are confidential." "How did you— It doesn't matter how I got them. What matters is what I do with them now." "If you go to the police," he said, his voice low and threatening, "I'll release those photos. Your wife's career will be over. Everyone will see—" "No, you won't," I interrupted. "Because I've already consulted with a lawyer who specializes in cyber exploitation. The moment you release those photos, you'll be committing a crime. Not just revenge porn, but criminal coercion, sexual assault, and probably a dozen other charges. The difference is my wife was a victim, but you'll go to prison. You can't prove coercion. Those photos show a consensual. The text messages prove coercion, especially the ones where you explicitly threaten her. It stops when I say it stops. Don't even think about saying no. Those aren't the words of a consensual relationship, Richard. Those are the words of a predator. He stood up again, his hands trembling slightly with rage. Get out of my office. I'm not finished. I stood too, and we faced each other across his desk. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write a resignation letter effective immediately. You're going to cite personal reasons. Then you're going to transfer every photo you have of my wife to this USB drive. I placed it on his desk. And you're going to delete them from every device and cloud account you have access to. And then you're going to disappear from our lives. And if I don't, then tomorrow morning I go to the police. I go to your company's board of directors. I go to every major news outlet in this city with the whole story. The photos, the coercion, the sealed complaints from your previous company, all of it. Maybe you're right. Maybe the legal case is complicated. But the court of public opinion? That's a different story. Your career will be over. Your reputation will be destroyed. Everyone will know what you really are. We stared at each other for a long moment. I could see him weighing his options, trying to find a way out. But we both knew I had him cornered. There's something you're forgetting, he said finally, a cruel smile crossing his face. If I go down, I'm taking Claire with me. Those photos will come out one way or another. Maybe not from me directly, but they'll leak. Your wife will be humiliated. Claire and I have already discussed that possibility, I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. And she's willing to take that risk if it means stopping you from hurting anyone else. She's braver than you ever gave her credit for. That was a partial bluff. The thought of those photos becoming public terrified both of us. But I kept my expression neutral, my voice steady. Richard slumped back in his chair. He looked smaller suddenly, less like a powerful executive and more like what he really was, a coward who preyed on vulnerable women. Fine, he said bitterly, but this USB drive, I need time to gather everything. The files are distributed across multiple accounts. You have 24 hours. Tomorrow at noon, you'll meet me at the Starbucks on 5th Street. You'll bring the USB drive with every photo, and I'll bring my laptop to verify they're all there. Once I confirm, you'll delete them from your devices while I watch. Then we're done. And if I don't show up, then at 12:01 p.m. I start making phone calls. Your choice, Richard. I turned and walked toward the door. Wait, he called out. I stopped but didn't turn around. That recording device in your pocket. You got what you wanted. You got me to admit everything. Actually, I said, I stopped recording 15 minutes ago, right before I started making criminal threats against you. Because unlike you, I'm not stupid enough to incriminate myself. It was another bluff. The recorder was still running, but I wanted him to feel the same uncertainty he'd made Claire feel for months. I walked out of that office, past Beth's desk, through the lobby and out to my car. Only when I was safely inside did I let myself shake. The next day, Richard showed up at Starbucks looking haggard. He handed over a USB drive without a word. I spent an hour going through the files while he sat across from me, his expensive coffee growing cold. There were 23 photos in total, each one more invasive than the last. These are all of them? I asked. Yes. Cloud accounts? He pulled out his phone and showed me him accessing his various cloud storage accounts, demonstrating that they were empty of any photos of Claire. Computer. Backups. All deleted. I didn't entirely believe him. There was no way to be certain he hadn't kept copies somewhere. But this was the best I could do without more invasive measures. I saved all the files to my own secure drive as evidence, then watched as he deleted them from the USB drive. We're done, I said. Are we? He looked at me with hollow eyes. You've destroyed my career. I hope you feel good about that. You destroyed your own career the moment you decided to assault my wife, I said. And for what it's worth, I don't feel good about any of this. I feel sick. Sick that this happened to Claire. Sick that there are probably other women you've hurt. Sick that you'll probably never face real legal consequences. So why not go to the police anyway? Because I made a promise to Claire that I would protect her first. But make no mistake, Richard. If I ever hear that you've done something like this to another woman, I won't hesitate. I'll bring everything to the authorities and let the chips fall where they may. He stood up without another word and walked out of the Starbucks. I never saw him again. 3 weeks later, Claire and I were sitting on our back porch watching the sunset. She'd been going to therapy twice a week, working through the trauma of what had happened. We'd been going to couples therapy too, rebuilding the trust that had been damaged by months of enforced secrecy. I heard Richard moved to Seattle, Claire said quietly. Someone at work said he took a job at a smaller firm. Good, I said. The farther away, the better. I keep waiting to feel, I don't know, relieved, vindicated, but mostly I just feel tired. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Thank you, Adam, for believing me. For fighting for me. I don't know what I would have done if... You don't have to thank me, I said, kissing the top of her head. We're a team, remember? For better or worse. This was definitely worse. But we got through it. She was quiet for a moment. I put in my resignation today. I pulled back to look at her. Claire, I can't stay there, she said. Every time I walk into that office, I remember what happened. I need a fresh start. And honestly, I don't trust that company. They covered up Richard's behavior before. They'd do it again. What will you do? She smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen in months. I've been thinking about starting my own consulting firm. It's something I've always wanted to do, and now I have a reason to take the leap. I think that's a great idea. We sat there as the sky turned from orange to purple to dark, holding hands and not talking, just being present with each other. It would take time to fully heal from what Richard had done. Claire had nightmares sometimes, and there were moments when the weight of it all seemed overwhelming. But we were facing it together. 6 months later, Claire's consulting firm was thriving. She'd landed 3 major clients and hired 2 employees. The nightmares had become less frequent. We'd started talking about the future again, about maybe buying a house with a bigger yard, about finally starting that family we'd always planned. One evening, Claire got a text from an unknown number. She showed it to me, her hand trembling slightly. My name is Jennifer. I worked with Richard Thornton at his new company. I heard what happened with him at his last job. I need to talk to someone. Can we meet? Claire looked at me and I saw the conflict in her eyes. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to leave that part of her life behind forever. But another part, the stronger part, knew that staying silent meant potentially allowing Richard to hurt someone else. Call her, I said. Tell her your story, and tell her she's not alone. Claire nodded and typed out a response. We'd survived the worst that could happen. We'd faced down a predator and won. Not perfectly, but well enough. And now we had a choice, to hide and protect ourselves or to stand up and help others do the same. Claire chose to stand up. And I stood beside her, just like I always would, because that's what love is. Not just being there for the good times, but fighting together through the worst times. And coming out stronger on the other side, as I watched my wife type out her response to Jennifer, offering support and solidarity to another victim, I realized something. Richard Thornton hadn't destroyed us. He'd tried, but he'd failed. Instead, he'd forged us into something stronger, more resilient, more united than we'd ever been before. And that was the real victory.